Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the February 5th meeting of the Fairborn City Schools Board of Education. Tonight it is my pleasure that Malachi Ulmer will join us and lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Awesome.
Come on now. You can just stand right there. Flag's right over there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Malachi.
Thank you.
Mr. Philo, will you call the roll?
Mr. McCourt,
Here.
Ms. Reister,
Here.
Mrs. Blandino,
Here.
Mr. Browning,
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
And before we have a motion, Mr.
Oh,
President,
yes, sir.
just one thing to adjust on the agenda is we do have executive session listed on there as item 11. There is no need for executive session, so strike executive session and adjourn from executive session off of the agenda to please the board.
Okay. Now, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Browning. Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Mr.
Call the roll,
Browning,
please.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Blandino,
Yes.
Ms. Reister,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt.
Yes, motion carries. Next, approve minutes of the Thursday, January 9, 2020 organizational meeting, the Thursday, January 9, 2020 regular meeting, and the Thursday, January 16, 2020 special meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Reister.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. Mr. Philo?
Ms. Reister,
Yes.
Mr. Browning,
Yes.
Mrs. Blandino,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt.
Yes, motion carries. Next, board reports and good of the order. Mr. Wilson, will you lead us?
Oh, certainly don't have much in the way to report. We do have some upcoming events, the spring musical coming up later this month, which is always a entertaining thing. And from my legislative liaison duties, the legislature has kicked the Ed Choice voucher can down the road a couple of months to try to adjust that to something more tolerable than what it is now. And that's about all I really have.
Ms. Reister?
The only thing that I have is that on Friday, February 28th, Shoes for the Shoeless will be at Baker Middle School. The Fairborn Senior Center is doing a sock drive, so if you are so inclined to buy new socks for ages 5 years old all the way up to adult sizes and drop them off there, that would be greatly appreciated. They will be donated to Shoes for the Shoeless.
They don't want my old holy.
No, no, they sure don't.
Please, no. Ms. Blandino, Mrs. Blandino, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. I attended the Fairborn Education Foundation and the Fairborn Alumni Association meeting in January. Got up to speed on their mission and their goals. It's always good to see the number of supporters for the school district and the generosity of our alumni and supporters across the board. Got to attend a few basketball games and am attending a swimming meet this weekend. I continue to be so impressed by the heart and soul of the athletes, the students, the administration, the teachers, and this board that go to these events and watch our young people perform.
Mr. Browning?
Okay. Okay, I've been to quite a few of the boys' basketball games and girls' basketball games, and just wanted to highlight the girls' basketball team. Last Saturday, well, the first time we played Vandalia Butler, we lost by 12 at Butler. And last Saturday went to the rematch at our school, and we won by 20. which was a huge win for our girls. And it's kind of neat to look at the progress. So, you know, you got to look at records and those kind of things, but what I look for is the team getting better as the season goes. And you can tell by that score and the way they're playing that greatly improved. And tonight is senior night for the girls. Andy mentioned the musical coming up. It's later this month. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It's Fiddler on the Roof, which is an outstanding musical. And for anybody that's gone to the high school musical the last few years, the talent that we've got in the district, to me, is unbelievable. It's like something you ought to see almost on Broadway kind of thing. They do such a good job with it. And tickets are available online. If you go to the school webpage, you can actually click and find the tickets and buy tickets online. So everybody ought to try to go to that. One comment on the basketball games, switching gears at the games, the pep band. Our pep band is by far, to me, the best pep band that I've seen, excuse me, at any of the basketball games that I've been to. And it's fun to watch the crowd and how they help fire up the crowd. So that's it.
Thank you.
Mr. McCourt, I have something to add.
Please.
I'd like to congratulate our varsity cheer squad on their
Yes.
attaining the opportunity to participate at the state level. So congratulations to our varsity cheerleaders.
Very good. Thank you for remembering that. I as well been to a lot of the basketball games. Jerry Browning and myself did attend a swim meet, and I believe it was last night maybe. I was up on the hill watching a bowling contest along with a lot of our administrators and building principals and assistant principals. I do think it's good that we get out and see what our students are doing, both academically and athletically. But it's always a pleasure to go see those kids compete. As well as some of the meetings, steering committee meeting, CAT meetings, visionary meetings. These are a lot of the meetings that some of the board people do attend, and also with the construction meeting for the new building at the primary. So, and if you've not seen that, drive by. That is getting closer and closer, but there is a whole lot of work yet to be done. So we're looking to get into that school sometime mid-June and move things in, but we've got a very small window of opportunity to get a lot of things done, so it's always nice to see the building progress. Anyone else for board reports or for the good of the order?
No.
Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is recognition of visitors and public comments. We would like to invite any and all of our guests to come forward. If you have any comments, please go to the microphone over here, state your name and address. We will give you 5 minutes for your comments, and please address all your comments to the board. Seeing none, next item on the agenda is school district presentations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCord. First, we have, once again, some of Fairborn's finest students, and we will be recognizing them, and they are spelling bee winners. And here to present this recognition will be Dr. Sue Brackenhoff, Director, Curriculum and Instruction.
Mr. Nebus, please join me. The spelling bee has been a long tradition here in Fairborn. Up until a few years ago, in addition to the building spelling bees, we had a city-wide spelling bee, and students competed. The winner of that spelling bee had the honor of going on to the regional spelling bee, usually held in Dayton. At the national level, a few years ago, they changed that process. So now our winners take a test, and it's kind of a vocabulary, not just spelling test, to qualify to move on to the Dayton regional ones. So we have shifted our recognition of them to our board meetings. I've asked Mr. Nebus to join us because he represents family and Fairborn history. His parents, Dorothy and Oscar Nebus, were sponsors of our spelling bee from, I'm going to let him tell how many years ago it probably was. I've been here 20 years, and they did not miss a bee. At the building, the city level, there were times where, as their health changed, that they couldn't physically be there, and their son was there with his cell phone, and his mom was checking off every word that was spelled, and she could probably at any point in time tell you what was the winning word. So a long family history. And I've asked Mr. Nebus to join me because, again, he continues the tradition of supporting the bee. And that support is not only in the spirit of it, but as well as the trophies. He and his family for years have sponsored the trophies, and he is here tonight to help us award those to our spelling bee winners. Do you want to say something?
Simply put, the history comes back to the fact that our family's been in Fairborn since, I think, 1954, and I'm the third of three sons that graduated from Fairborn. All three of us are college graduates, and all the grandchildren are college graduates as well. So education has always been an important part with my parents. And years ago, when I started elementary school, my mom wanted to go back to work, and so she got a job at the central office, eventually working in the office that you now are in charge of as a secretary. And she heard that the spelling bee was being started back in 76, 77 timeframe, I believe. And she started attending it. And it dawned on her after a couple years that there were a lot of interest in the public supporting athletics and choir and band and other avenues. But she looked at the spelling bee and thought, I wonder if anyone supports that. And that was always something that was important to her as a child, was her little Iowa school spelling bee. So she asked and was told, by all means, if you wish to support it, please do. So I would estimate somewhere in the 80s, I think, is probably when they started underwriting the cost of the trophies. And as Dr. Brackenhoff said, the years went by, and we always had to have that date marked on the calendar. Be sure we can't miss that, and by all means, let's make sure that the weather cooperates, because there were years when we'd have to fight to get to a school. I think they used to be held at the 5 Points, and that was quite a challenge. And as already stated, even in their final years, we made every effort, if they were physically able, to come, because it was something they truly enjoyed. So after their passing, I thought, I owed it to them to continue, because it was something that I enjoyed along with them. So that's the brief history.
So tonight we have some of our spelling bee champions here with us, and we will start with our intermediate representative, and this is our first place winner at Fairborn Intermediate School. Serenity Ulmer Ernest is a 5th grader in Mrs. Yuri's class, and if she will come up here, and we will award her the tallest. And do we have any more Fairborn Intermediate students? I'm not seeing any students here, so we will make sure that our second place winner, Mallory Matston, Mr. Seelock's 5th grade class, receives her trophy, and Tasia Days in Miss Van Koos's 4th grade class. We will make sure that she gets her trophy also. We have 2 of our 3 champions here from Baker Middle School, and we will start with our 3rd place champion, Haley Benkin, a 7th grader. Haley, please join us up here. And our 1st place winner at Baker Middle School, Alexandra Hamilton. In the days of spell check and computers and all of the assisted technology we still have students. Okay, great, another student here. We still have students where spelling is a strength for them. And I am going to take a guess that this is Aiden Pritchett, 8th grader from Baker Middle School. Please join us. So these represent some of the best of the best. All of the classrooms that have their classroom spelling bees, and then they move on to a district spelling bee and continue round after round to find the champions, the top 3 spellers, and I present to you the 2020 Spelling Bee champions. Congratulations, guys. Yeah, we'll slide behind you guys if you guys will step forward. You step to the front. There we go. Got a nice phone here.
Yeah.
Put Andy next to you.
I still do that once in a while.
Take your time, we're fine.
The rest of the meeting is pretty dull, so.
Congratulations.
Oh, it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you know how to clear over.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Again,
Thank you.
thank
See you later, bud.
Malachi,
Thanks,
thank you.
Malachi.
Thank you.
Thank all of you.
See you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It's N-I-E-V-E-S.
That's a great story.
His brother and I ran track and cross country together. Alan was a year older than me. So I think he was 73.
He honors his parents by
Yeah.
keeping that alive.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Our next presentation will be the monthly financial and our CAFR report given by our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Kevin Philo.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Pleasure to present to the board monthly financial report. I'll give that report first, and we'll talk about the comprehensive annual financial report. This on. I hate using the microphone, Emily, but I understand it.
That
that's now recorded for posterity.
Yes. Okay. The monthly financial report this month is a little bit off with some explanations. Go ahead. There we go. The monthly financial report, this is for December 2019, of fiscal year 2020. Right now, right? The receipts were below by about $550,000 for the month. Part of that, as I explained in the report, is initially the state of Ohio gave all of our increase this year in a category called student growth and wellness. I anticipated at the beginning of the school year that those would be put in through the state foundation. When I did the 5-year forecast and the monthly yearly projections, afterwards they came out in October and said that those would go into a separate fund. So those funds are in a different fund. There's roughly $434,000 in there. We haven't spent any of it yet, but I also anticipated that some of those expenditures that we show for here would be coded to that. So that's probably a change that will happen in the near future, but a little bit of the explanation on the receipts. Overall, the state foundation is above. The expenditures were also above. One was a timing of the transfer for $250,000 to the permanent improvement. The salaries and benefits are pretty much on target. They'd be actually lower if we'd coded some of that student wellness and growth money out of there. But the purchase services are running a little high, and hopefully those are timing issues that will work out in the future, but we're closely monitoring that. On track, our total expenditures are right now above projected by 2.4%, but we're still on track for ending cash balances in the $30 to $31 million. So that is the monthly budget finance report that you guys see every month. And there's the cash projection. Think about your own budget, that if you tried to project out what you'd get in revenue and expenditures month by month. A lot of businesses only do this on a yearly basis or a quarterly basis. Hardly any school districts anymore do this on a monthly basis, but I believe it gives us early indications if there's problems. I'm pleased to present to the board the comprehensive annual financial report. Each of the board members have this at their table. It is a fun read of 180 pages, guaranteed to put you to sleep at night. So if 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to pick up something and fall fast asleep within 5 minutes, grab this. In all seriousness, though, this is the second one that we've done in recent history. We did one last year. We received 2 national awards for it. This year we anticipate getting the same 2 national awards, and we also anticipate getting the State Auditor's Award for a clean audit. And the thing about a clean audit is everybody talks that it's the treasurer's office, and it is the treasurer's office, but it is really the whole district in terms of they audit special education, they audit everything. So when there's a clean opinion on the financials and there's a clean audit, it really talks about the entire district. So congratulations to the entire district and the support of the board in doing this project. The most important parts of the CAFR is, one is the title page, because that's what everybody sees, because not a lot of people open it up, but it is proof that you've done it. The next and the most important is on page 13 and 14. This is the opinion. This is the accounting gold standard in terms of the best opinion possible that the independent outside auditors selected by the State of Ohio Auditor's Office have reviewed the finances, audited them due to nationally recognized standards, and find everything correct as presented. So we take it for granted, but it's the best opinion possible. And if you want to read it, it's not an easy read, but. So what I want to show you in the next 150 pages, those are really boring, okay? There's footnotes, there's graphs, there's budgetary analysis, et cetera. But there are some interesting things in here. If you turn to the statistical section, roughly right around page 165 or so, we'll just point out a few of the interesting stats that we have. This one talks about our direct and overlapping property tax rates, and you'll see is most of the statistical stuff goes over the last 10 years. And so in terms of this, what I want to point out is in 2009, 2010 is our total millage rate was 51.8. 10 years later, it's only 55.5. In terms of that includes some decreases for the school district, an increase with the bond issue, but also you see how much the county has went up, how much the township has went up and down. But in general, it's pretty flat. And to expect the same services for the same price as you did 10 years ago is really remarkable. The bags of chips that you buy are not the same size as they were 10 years ago, or at the same price. So the second is the principal property taxpayers in terms of where they were in December 31st, 2018 as compared to 9 years earlier, December 31st, 2009. It's interesting that you look at currently, they're all LLCs, which I take to be rental properties probably, in terms of if the taxpayers, if the tax duplicates were correct and we didn't have exempt, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Wright State University would be clearly above any of those on there. But just to see, if you look at 2009, the number one was Dayton Power and Light, when there was the more taxes on the public utilities. With the changes in state law, you can see they're no longer in the top 10. So just as those little things that erode our tax base, it's one of the things to point out. Property tax levies and collections for the last 10 years. And I thought this was interesting because if you look in 2018, 2019, our percent of our current levy collected is 97%. That tells me that the economy in Fairborn directly is pretty healthy. It's increased in the last 10 years or so. It was roughly 94, 95. A 97% property tax collection rate is pretty good and indicative of a healthy community. We don't have, 1/4 of our property taxes that go uncollected, so it's pretty healthy, and that's a good indicator. Demographics and economic statistics, the last 10 fiscal years. If you look at it, you'll see jumps every 5 years and every 10 years because this is based on census data. So they do the census every 10 years and update it every 5. So it's not that salaries are flat for 5 years and then they suddenly go up. It's just the reporting of them. So if you're interested in the per capita personal income or the median age, 34 years old. It's also interesting to look at the unemployment rates as they relate to Greene County, Ohio, and the United States. We're pretty similar to the state of Ohio and a little bit better than the national average usually. Don't you find this exciting?
Edge of my seat.
I can make finance interesting sometimes. And finally, the principal employers. In terms of, on there it shows the current year and 9 years ago. I think there was some confusion on that page. I think the current one is Greene County, and I think the one 10 years ago was Fairborn only. So I just pulled up the current one for the county. You look at Wright-Patterson, as we'd expect, the largest single employer on one location in the state of Ohio, Wright State University. But interesting in terms of Fairborn is really number 10 in the number of employees in all of Greene County. So when people don't think about school districts having an economic effect, if you look on there, Wright Patterson has AFIT, Wright State University, Beaver Creek City Schools, Cedarville University, Fairborn City Schools. A lot of it has to do with education. So that's something that really Greene County should be proud of, and I know they take advantage of. So again, if you're ever really bored, anybody in the audience want one? We can put it by your nightstand. Guaranteed sleep in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks to your staff. Rick, I know we appreciate your efforts. This is pretty big stuff and quite a bit to go through and to get those numbers. So thanks, Rick and Kevin and your staff.
Our next presentation will be from our Director of Business Affairs, Mr. Jeff Patrick. Just to remind everybody, you know, every month when we give a construction update, I've been going, hey, we're 24 months out, we're 23, 22. We are less than 4 months out from the keys being turned over to us for the primary. So.
That is true.
Cue the music.
At the primary last Friday, we tried to accept some furniture bids. The furniture was broken down into 4 bid portions: classroom furniture, administrative/cafeteria, shelving, and music/miscellaneous furniture. When we opened those bids last Friday, they had to be within 10% of the estimates. The bids were within 10% of the estimates for classroom furniture and shelving. The other 2 areas, they were not within the 10%, which means we have to rebid those sections. So after a meeting today, we have pulled some items from those bids to be able to re-advertise that and hopefully be able to accept those bids the end of February, which means that when we get to March, we will open those bids on, I believe, Friday, March the 6th, which would be the day after the March board meeting. So we will probably need to schedule a special board meeting within the next week after that to try to accept those 2 bids. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in work session. But the furniture bids was kind of like the bids for the intermediate, a little higher than the estimates. I think it's just part of the phase that we're in construction right now. It's kind of a tough gamut to judge at this point in time. And even with SHP and OFCC working on the estimate prices, we were definitely off in a couple areas. So that makes it tough to bid. The good thing is that the classroom furniture, which was the biggest bid, was accepted, and you'll be accepting that tonight. So that shouldn't hold us back from being able to move in June and so forth. So that's good. It just causes us a little bit more work for the other 2 sections. So any questions about the furniture bid for the primary? No. The primary itself, we walked it last Friday, and as you work from Funderburg across to Dayton Yellow Springs, the side closest to Funderburg is the most complete. And as you walk that last week, you will have noticed that the grid in the ceiling has been there. Ceiling tiles are in, lights are in, and finished paint is in some of those classrooms. So that's kind of neat. And then as you progress through the building, you know, the closer you get to Dayton Yellow Springs, it's probably been neglected the most, but as you've driven past it, you've seen that the walls are going up on the preschool side, the office areas are coming along, and so forth. So as Mr. Lawley can tell you, they're still telling us that we'll be able to move in on the 16th of June. So that's, 15th, 16th of June. As long as we can do that this summer, we should be able to get everything in. So that's good. The intermediate, once again, we've not really done anything other than accept those bids with the intermediate. So it'll sit idle probably until we get everybody moved out of that building. We have until August the 8th to get out of that building, and then August the 8th, we basically turn over the keys to the construction company for the start of the abatement and demolition of that building. So now that we've accepted that bid, it'll kind of sit still for a couple months, which is good because we're going to need the time to move the people out of there. So we have met with staff members. informed them of placements for next year so that people are kind of not worried about that. We did that this afternoon and this morning, and most of those people that are affected have been told which building they'll be in. So we've kind of checked that off a little bit, and we'll have to have some moving meetings as far as moving individuals, packing of books and so forth. We'll probably do that again sometime in March. We have, I think, over 5,000 boxes that are in the district, maybe closer to 6,000 boxes that are flat right now, sitting to be delivered to classroom teachers and everybody else to be boxing up. So the principals have asked for us to hold off on delivering those boxes until after testing season, which is understandable. So they're here. We have them. We have the tape. That should be ready to go. So any questions about construction?
No, but I will offer up use of my Honda Element as a freight hauler if need be.
We may need to take you up on that. So we'll have to wait and see. Thanks.
Thank you.
We could use the slogan, 5 board members and a truck.
That's right.
I think once they'd see us work, I think they'd get second ideas.
That all for you? Okay. Next, from the Office of Budget and Finance, it is recommended that the Board of Education accept the receipt of the monthly financial report for December 2019. Board members, there is an attachment there, and also under B, just disposing of a fixed asset. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. Mr. Philo?
Mr. Browning,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Blandino,
Yes.
Ms. Reister,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt.
Yes, motion carries. Next item, administrative report from the superintendent's and superintendent's recommendations. Continues over to page 3 from what I have in my book. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board? Mr. Philo, would you please?
Ms. Reister,
Yes.
Mr. Browning,
Yes.
Mrs. Blandino,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt.
Yes, motion carries. And next thing on the agenda, the superintendent would like gracefully to acknowledge the following gifts and donations. And Mrs. Blandino, if you would.
Yes. The following donations: Ally Financial, $186.51 for Fairborn Primary School. Under Ackerman Relays, Tom Kirsch Family, $100. Town and Country Animal Clinic, $100. Kendra Welton, $100. For Hall of Honor, Robert Armstrong, $50. Jane Baker Bowyer, $50. M. Joyce Dennis, $50. Dr. Harry Damacone, $100. Chris and Pam Gayhart, $100. Jack and Judy Gayhart, $100. Francis Gideon, Jr., $100. Mayor Paul Keller, $25. Tom Kugler, Greene County Commissioner, $100. Laurel Mayer, $25. William Naughton, $100. Edward and Norma Nicola, $25. Michael and Kathleen Sewer, $100. Phil and Mary Spar, $100. Mel Sturtz, $50. Jane Van Thiel Trame and family, $100. And Michael Euchre, $100.
Thank you very much, and to all the donors, we thank you so much for your generous donation. Next on the agenda, item 10, under new business, approve the attached resolution in support of the City of Fairborn income tax levy with an attachment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And thank you, Jerry. Mr. Blandino. Mr. Philo, please.
Ms. Reister,
Yes.
Mr. Browning,
Yes.
Mrs. Blandino.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes,
Mr. McCourt.
Yes, motion carries.
and the city will be very happy to receive this.
This time, the board will go into a work session. We don't anticipate any further action outside of the work session except adjournment. Take a short recess and then we'll
Okay.
congregate the tables.
If you're leaving us all, thank you for coming.